Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here. So first of all, I hope the quality's alright because I am doing this on my Mac. I'm really sorry, I was meant to do this on my actual camcorder. I've been doing a lot of my videos recently on an iPad and then uploading it in like really low quality because it's easier. I mean, when I know it's better to have higher quality, but I mean the broadband speed here, I mean it was taking like 5 or 6 hours to upload a video that was like 20 minutes long. So I do know it's better to be in higher quality, but I can also get more content out if it's lower quality. So this is my compromise. Today I'm using the Mac, although I could have used the camcorder. I'll be honest, I don't know where it is. I don't know where it is at all. This is just going to be a really chatty one anyway. Really casual vlog, just talking, and a while ago. So this was before I really knew what I was doing with my channel. I'd just come back on. This is 3 months ago. So I put up a getting to know me video and I wanted to do a Q&A. This is not like a full Q&A, but I thought I could answer some questions. I know people are here for all different reasons, but some people like to, you know, hear about my thoughts and life and stuff. So that's for those people. There's going to be a whole mixture of stuff on this channel. So I need to wash my hair, which is why it's not being cut short. It's just like this. I will show you what I've done to the back, which is my trick when my hair needs a wash. I don't know what this actually looks like from the back. So I do that. Pre-Raphaelite looking. I don't know, does that even look good? I don't know. I don't know, is my labelling? You don't look at yourself from the back, do you? So yeah, it's pre-Raphaelite mode. That's the idea. Maybe if I give it in like profile, can you even see it in profile? That's my good side. I prefer this side. Okay. So I hope you guys are doing really well. I guess I want to say hi to the people that have been with me for a really long time, who are probably surprised to see that I've like suddenly got back to it. Like, I went through the stage where when I was doing my degree and my masters, I've done my masters now, the certificates come through, it's that weird point in my life where I'm thrilled to pieces about it, but I'm also thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to make another plan now. So there's that. So I'm really happy about that, but it means I've got more time. Obviously I had to prioritise study, but now I've got more time. And especially, I think here in the UK, I have this thing where I'm neurodivergent. So I really have always felt injustice on a really strong level, like an upsetting level, to the extent that I've had people say to me before, I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet, people have said this to me, you know, have you thought about going into politics? I mean, not necessarily because I'd be any good, but just because I have an interest in it. The answer is no, because I think I'd do better at charity work or awareness or kind of looking at systems and trying to dismantle systems, because I'm very emotional. I get really upset when I say injustice, and I just couldn't do the whole calm thing. Like, I would get upset or I'd get angry, and I think that's a neurodivergent thing. I think that we feel a really big sense of injustice and we can get really emotional when we see an injustice. So recently on my channel I've been kind of focusing on the Meghan and Harry smear campaign, which might surprise people because I'm not a monarchist. So it's weird because, so obviously, if you can see behind me, this is weird because I've got you at a weird angle. So you're not where, this is, I don't know why I'm saying this to you, you're not where you would think you would be. You're at a different angle. That up there, that's Anne Boleyn. Well, is it? It's meant to be. It was bought at Hever Castle, but that's not like a direct portrait of Anne Boleyn. And then there as well, that's also a portrait of Anne Boleyn, supposedly. So I have an interest in Tudor history, Tudor politics. I've got like 2 whole shelves worth of books about the Tudor and medieval period, but I'm interested in terms of the kind of, I suppose I'm interested in the patriarchal element. Like, I'm very interested in the story of Henry's wives. I hate to say Henry's wives, but you know, they're all women in their own right. And it's a difficult one because obviously I'm someone who's a socialist, but when you look back at the Tudor times, it's very interesting to see what life would be like for everyday women. But obviously a lot of that stuff wasn't recorded. So it's quite distressing that even when you're seeing recorded the most privileged women in that society and they're still being terribly abused, it's just worrying. So that's an interest of mine. So I have an interest in royalty in terms of a system. right? And in terms of a system and the history of the monarchy, that interests me on a historical level. But with the mentality not of maintaining it, because I find there's different sorts of historians. I don't know if you'd call me a historian. I've got friends who are actual historians. Like, I'm just a fan, or like a hobbyist, I suppose. I've got friends who are actual historians. But I think you get certain people, when you look into royal history, there's a real split, there's a real divide I've found between, like, people who are into it because they like status and it makes them feel closer to it. And I think some people, they like look into it. Okay, I'm going to name some names. David Starkey. I'm going to make a video at some point about David Starkey and his book he wrote about Henry's wives, because it's sexist. But, you know, people who seem to, like, want to continue the system. Now, for me, looking at that system, I can't look into that historically and study it without thinking, wow, that needs to change. You know? Anyway, so I do have an interest in the idea of monarchy as a system and what its purpose is, especially in the modern age, like how we kind of look back at it as this big thing in Britain's history that, you know, we're meant to be so proud of, and then how that's kind of being translated into the modern day through propaganda, and how the modern royals are trying to adapt to, you know, the kind of social media age, and an age where people are getting increasingly empowered, and we're not necessarily always trusting propaganda anymore. I think the younger generations are more aware because we have different social medias. You know, sometimes you'll get news places which are not great, like GB News, but you'll also get, you know, social media which will show you, you know, what people are thinking, and sometimes will show you the truth of a situation if the mainstream media is lying to you. And I don't say that like some sort of, oh, never trust the mainstream media sort of person, but I will say that when it comes to certain issues, I mean, yeah, sure, they're the mainstream media because they are interested in continuing the status quo, you know, so you're not always going to get what you need from the mainstream media. But always fact check. I'm not saying just, you know, let's go and listen to any old person, like fake news. Like, do fact check and research, but I think if you do research and you go in with an open mind, it's all right. But that's an interest of mine. So I'm also interested in the story of Diana. So do I have her book around here? Like, I do, it's right here. Right. So at the moment, I'm reading Diana, Her True Story in Her Own Words, and I've read it before and I've annotated it so much. And when I first started reading it, I was interested because Princess Diana has often been, people would say that if she was diagnosed today, she might be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which is emotional intensity disorder, which is now being understood, and this is still quite early in terms of diagnosis, etc., and what we know about these things. But I think a lot of women are either being misdiagnosed, so they might be autistic, they might be in an abuse situation, so it might be complex post-traumatic stress disorder. If someone is abused over a long period of time and they don't feel empowered, I think it can make you feel very out of control with your emotions. Also, I think when it comes to what they would say is borderline personality disorder, I'm not saying it necessarily doesn't exist, but it can coexist with other things, and it's incredibly stigmatized. So I have a diagnosis at the moment of borderline personality disorder, which may be a complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm on a list for therapy at the moment, which it's taken a while. It's taken a long time, but I obviously have a complex trauma history, which I don't really want to get into in this video because I want to keep it upbeat and happy, but I have a very complex trauma history. So, and I didn't disclose that at the time to professionals, and also you're made to feel like you're the problem, if that makes sense, and it's only when you do the trauma work and you actually open up about those traumas that it kind of starts to make sense as a puzzle. So anyway, I was interested in Princess Diana. So I'm reading this recently because of basically the abuse she suffered in the system, essentially. And I'm also obviously reading Spare by Prince Harry, which is over there, which you know I'm reading if you are watching my Meghan and Harry videos. Because basically what we're seeing Harry talk about in Spare is pretty much backing up what Diana says in Her True Story in her own words. So, you know, all these people saying, oh, you know, Meghan's making it up, Harry's making it up. I mean, they did the same to Sarah Ferguson. So Sarah Ferguson is the ex-wife of Andrew, and the system kind of turned on her as well. So they do have a kind of track record with when someone kind of comes forward as a sort of whistleblower or abuse survivor in that system, they use the same playbook to kind of smear them, which is why it's so weird that you've got people who act like they're so pro-Diana, but they hate Meghan and Harry so much, when if... It's just interesting, because how would they have reacted when Diana told her story? Right? It just doesn't make much sense to me. But I'm reading those at the moment to make some more videos. So I've got, I recently saw the South Park thing. I don't like South Park. I think it's like mean-spirited. I think it's quite juvenile. Sometimes I just don't like comedy where it's meant to just be unkind. I feel like it's that kind of, maybe it's a disservice to teenagers to say it's teenage, but it's kind of that stage that a lot of us grow out of, I think, where the joke is being outrageous. And that's it. But I think a lot of adults unfortunately take that into their adult humour, where they kind of think that like making fun of people is okay. And like, don't get me wrong, if someone's awful, okay, like make fun of them, that's your own business. You know, but I do question these people who say, oh no, I hate everyone equally, like I roast everyone equally. It's like, why though? Why? Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just weird. But that's really, you know, disturbing. As a victim myself, so I'm a victim and I'm a survivor, which you probably already know about me, but yeah, that's true. So it's quite a personal thing when you see, this is why I feel so connected to it. I'm sorry, this is a total tangent. I'm sure I've changed what I was going to do in this video, but when you feel connected to something, when you see someone being publicly victim blamed, and you know the repercussions that's going to have to people in actual life, people who are being abused because they're listening to it and they're seeing it all over social media and on the news and on the magazines, I think that's when it becomes really personal. So I think when you're seeing these ideas that victims should just be quiet, or that they're attention seeking and trying to pick apart everything a victim does, in this country we do this thing where rather than examine an abuser, we examine everything their victim says, right? So we put the victim, it's like we put the victim on trial. And it is really messed up. It is incredibly messed up. So that's kind of what I'm looking at the moment. Like, you wouldn't expect that I'm someone who'd go out to bat for Harry and Meghan. I mean, ages ago, I mean, I remember I made some videos a while ago, and I don't think I really understood the whole scale of the problem. I did know, I could tell there was racism and there was sexism towards Meghan, and I think in some ways I kind of didn't want to think about it because with my own personal situation, so it's quite triggering, so I was just trying to like stay away from it. And especially because I'm a left-winger, you know, I'm extremely anti-monarchy, I'm Republican, not in the scary American way, as in, I don't believe we should have a monarchy. But I think the danger there, and the temptation was for me to just kind of feel like, well, you know, they're in the system and I don't like that system. But then I started to think about it in terms of abuse, and I started to think about the actual, I don't know, I suppose I tried to really add that trauma lens to it, and then I started to kind of recontextualize it, and I started thinking about it more, because I remember in the past, so I've got quite a lot of new subscribers. Hello, if you're one of them. If this is the first time you've seen me vlog, then hello, welcome. Hope I don't scare you off. I'm I talk too much, I go off on tangents all the time. But, you know, I used to be, you know, I've got a lot of people who follow me who would consider themselves the Sussex squad. And I remember, like, you know, a while ago, you know, I could see what was going on, and I'm very supportive of Meghan and Harry in this situation. And I think at the time I was kind of tempted to be like, oh, I don't get, you know, why you'd call yourself like a Sussex squad or something. I don't understand that team mentality. But then the more I delved into it, I understood. I completely understood, because it's not about the royals or the royal system. It is about standing by an abuse survivor, whistleblowers, and about showing your support for that in numbers. It's about solidarity, which is a very socialist quality, and something that I strive towards. So I kind of like recontextualize it, and I think really diving into these gossip magazines and everything I've been doing recently has just made me really feel really passionately about this, which again is weird because I'm so anti-monarchy. So anti-monarchy. Yeah, I don't know where that chat was going. Oh, I'm also reading at the moment, I'm reading Christopher Eccleston's autobiography. So he played the Ninth Doctor. He's an actor. He's a northern working class actor, and he's a very successful, and he's a successful actor. You know, he's been in theatre. He's been in Othello. There's a version of Othello he's in, which is really great. You know, he's a great actor, and I'm massive on Doctor Who, so I love the Ninth Doctor. And there was this whole situation. There was this point where he left Doctor Who, but it was a bit shady because he kind of wasn't. I feel like I need to research it to make sure I'm not misspeaking here, but it kind of feels like it sounds like he didn't like something to do with the production team or the way people were being treated. He didn't think it was very good. And when he spoke out about that, he was kind of dismissed, and the kind of trust and relationship broke down between him and those high up. And then he kind of felt like he was blacklisted, because they do a similar thing. And this is why I talk about abuse systems all over the place, because in, for example, the blacklisting of Christopher Eccleston, which is from his perspective, it was basically put around that he's difficult. And in that world, once that goes out, that someone is difficult and that they stand up for things, right? They're a troublemaker, they're a disruptor. It then impacts their whole career, because, you know, the way things are over here. I mean, if you look at the BBC, it is a kind of friends club. I mean, we don't want to talk about it. There are some wonderful, wonderful actors and wonderful people part of the BBC that I'm glad we have. But I don't think it can be denied that it's harder for working class unknowns to get into that system, because so much of it is based on who you know, etc. And I remember Christopher Eccleston at the time, you know, he felt he was blacklisted. He had troubles with his mental health. He had an eating disorder. And he kind of connects in his book how nothing exists in a vacuum. It's about so many things. It's about class, and it's about masculinity and his experience of that, and the industry he's in, and all these different elements. He's such an intelligent man, and I just am really enjoying reading that. It's quite a tough read, but my respect for him has just grown so much. So I hopefully will make some sort of video about that, if anyone's interested. But it's really worth a read. I would get it for you. I don't know where it is. I think it's in my bag at the moment, because I've been kind of like reading it out and about. But yeah, I'm going to answer just a couple of questions here. I've already been talking for like 18 minutes, so I don't know how long my laptop is going to let me record for before it cuts me off. I don't know. So let's go through some of these questions and see. And I'm sorry if this is late. I know it is late, and I'm really sorry about that. And if you want, I can answer more of these. I mean, what I intend to do with the channel is I intend to keep up commentary on kind of things that are going on in the UK. I want to talk about abuse dynamics. I want to talk about trauma work, being a survivor. I want to share what I've learned in therapy, but also document my journey as well, because I found people really helpful. You know, to have that sort of community element has really helped me in the past. So I want to do that. I want to talk about, you know, politics stuff, all these different kinds of things, and just feel free on the channel to just post kind of whatever I feel like at the time. So hopefully that will suit different people who are on the channel, who come here for different things, and it won't be too jarring that there's different content all the time. Okay, so let's look at one from Lucy Adams, and I'm just randomly picking these right now. I will answer these in more detail, or do like a proper Q&A at some point. But okay, so Lucy says, my question is, how are things going post ADHD discovery, if you're comfortable sharing? They're going really well. So I'm not on medication anymore. The screen's just gone blank. I hope you're still seeing me. Are you seeing me? I hope so. Yeah, so how are things going? I was on medication for the ADHD, but something that I found is that it left me really checked out. So on the one hand, I was on Zagatin, and it was good because I would wake up in the morning and I'd take it and I would feel focused for a number of hours. So, but it would wear off. So for like a couple of hours, I would have like, I won't say it's normal focus, but I could focus on something more. But then it would wear off. But the problem was that it was leaving me feeling quite checked out and quite detached. So after a while, I decided to come off them for the time being, because my mental health kind of spiraled, not because of the ADHD thing, but because of other things, and it just felt like it wasn't the right time to be introducing medication and doing that. Like, I needed to be well first. So I think just knowing that I have the diagnosis is really helpful, though, because it's put into context like so much about myself. Because, you know, I constantly on this channel, you know, people say, oh, you talk too fast or you go off on tangents, and it's like, yeah. That's what it's like in my brain. I can't hold a thought. I'm quite impulsive, as you know. I think sometimes oversharing, which is what you can, if you have ADHD, like sometimes I don't know, I find I become quite intense about things. It's a superpower in the sense that it makes sense now why I do hyperfocus. So if I'm really, really interested in something and it's like obsessing me, that thing will be done. I mean, I remember one summer I novelised the entire Cursed Child, and it was like this obsession. It was like, it's getting done. And that's how it felt when I wrote my novel. So I've got a novel first draft, more or less ready, which I need to go over again. I need to get into a space where my brain is ready to look over it again and really edit and really be ruthless. But it's a superpower in the sense that, you know, hyperfocus. That's a good thing. It's difficult when you're not interested in something because I just can't stay on topic if I don't care about something. Like when I was in school, and this is partly anxiety based as well, but if it's not like an interactive lesson where the teacher is moving around and there's an element where we talk, like if they're just reading to us, I used to get so like legs jiggling and drawing on the side of my paper, and I'd start to feel ill and feel sick and feel like stressed out because I'd feel like I wanted to scream. Like it's an actual feeling inside my body where it was like a sort of torture in the mental sense, and it was hard to explain, which suddenly I understand why now. Like it's because I don't do well when something's unengaging for long periods of time. Like sometimes I just need a very short break just to get me back. And it's the same with maths, because I always thought I always did pretty well in school, and I did well in maths until secondary school, and then it got to be a point where the thing with me is, if with English related stuff, so if it's like English lit, then I can really like get into it and obsess. And sometimes I would actually trick myself into doing that when we were at school. So I would deliberately make myself get obsessed with the book we were reading, because I would, in my mind, I'd do fan casts and I'd like write little bits and I'd draw the characters, and I would trick myself into becoming obsessed with the thing. So I could get really good grades in English. But when it comes to something like maths and numbers, I just can't hold on to them. And I also find it hard to do mental maths. So I could do maths where it's like written maths, but maths in my head doesn't seem to work because I can't hold on to the numbers. Like if someone tells me to add some things together, I can't remember the thing they've told me to add as well as what they've told me to do. So it makes a lot of sense. Everything just makes so much more sense for me as well. It's helping me in terms of I'm being less hard on myself. And I also know sometimes that I'm able to know that if I can't concentrate, I need to do something physical. Like I need to take a break. And I definitely think that in schools, it's not set up well for people who are neurodivergent or have different mental health issues or have ADHD, because you need to be connected to something. It doesn't matter how much you say, oh, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. Do you know the amount of times when I was a good kid, right? So people would think I was totally listening. I was gone somewhere else in my mind. I sometimes do that in conversation as well. So if I'm talking to someone, sometimes I will drift off without meaning to. I don't even know I've gone. And then I'll suddenly come back to myself in the middle of the conversation and I'm thinking, oh my God, what was just said? And I'm spending the rest of the conversation trying to piece together what they said in the break, trying not to be insensitive. The thing that's been really helpful now I've got the diagnosis is sometimes I can, in a non-offensive way now, I can say, I'm really sorry, I totally checked out for a minute. Would you mind going back a little bit? Because in the past I'd think, I don't want to be rude. It's nothing to do with how interesting the person is. Sometimes it just goes, really. I think very easily distractible. Yeah, I'll make a longer video about the ADHD stuff, I think, if that's helpful. Certainly it's like a weight off my mind to realise that I've got that. I mean, I think my dad possibly has ADHD as well, and possibly my English grandma maybe might have ADHD. I can certainly see like a pattern, but it's like so much easier now to kind of put a name to it, and you realise you're not broken, you're not faulty, you have a different way of doing things, and as long as you understand that, you can kind of hack it a bit. Like as in life hack, you can kind of find life hacks. So that's what I'm trying to do. It's a struggle, and I do kind of want to go back on medication, but I don't want to do that right now, because when I'm on a new medication, it kind of, the effects of that kind of spiral into other things, and I need to be in a state of wellness and like safety and wellness before I do that. But just the knowledge is just, oh, it's such a relief. Like I don't feel like I'm broken anymore. So good. It's so good. Okay, Queens and Witches, and what a name. I love that name so much. Okay, so you said you like the House of the Dragon reviews. Now I've got to be honest with the House of the Dragon reviews. As we're speaking of ADHD, I've kind of gone out of my obsession phase with House of the Dragon. It's not that I don't love it. I love it, and I will kick back into that obsession, but it's not kind of consuming me right now, and I'm finding it hard to kind of complete those right now. So I feel like what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into a space where I get myself back into it, like maybe watch it all in bulk and then get back into those. But right now my brain's not there. So I will continue with those, but thank you for saying that you like them. They're very long and rambling. But, you know, I'm glad you enjoy. Can you talk about historical figures and fictional characters you like and dislike? I feel like I should do a video for this. What I will say in terms of fictional characters I like, obviously, you know, I love Wanda Maximoff. She's probably my favourite, she's my favourite comics character. I love her family, basically. So I love Pietro Maximoff, Billy, Tommy, basically all the Young Avengers. It's all the Young Avengers. I mean, I am a big fan of BBC Merlin, and I do have a video, which is going to be like a ranting video, which I have to make, which is like, I have to go off about that show, because it was so good, and then they fudged it, and I'm just eternally, like, angry about what they did to Morgana. Morgana was, like, my icon when I was growing up. And watching it now, I mean, I was watching it with my brother Dan, you know, we always talk about Merlin, like, it's such a staple for us, like, all our jokes relate to Merlin at any time. But the more, like, we discuss it now as well, the moral of that show went the wrong way. Like, I can't believe what happened to that show. Like, if it was made now, you know, they tried to make the oppressed minority fighting for their rights into the villains, and then the hero Arthur. They didn't even get it right in terms of the legend, because Arthur's meant to be this guy that's, like, in my view, you know, if I was adapting it for that show, maybe I'll put that in the video as well, but, like, I would think that his flaw is that he's too kind. So, you know, betrayed by Guinevere, but he loves her and he loves Lancelot, so he lets them get away, and he's too kind, and he's a king that kind of wants to sort of create a form of democracy. I know that's like a modern reading, but I think if you were doing a more modernized version, maybe that might be the tragedy, you know, that he's just trying to do all these compassionate things in a situation where he's kind of a dictator, and it's, like, very, very messy. And then in the show, they made him just like some war criminal who kills the oppressed minority group, doesn't bend at all, like, he's just, in any sense. There's some ways in which Arthur should definitely bend, which if they had made it today, I'm sure he would. And they also didn't do the Guinevere and Lancelot relationship. And I'm sorry, you have Angel Colby, right? Angel Colby as Guinevere, who, when I look back at the show, so I remember I like Guinevere, but when I was watching it when I was younger, I was always frustrated, and I couldn't really work out why I was frustrated. And now I understand why I was frustrated. Because they don't really give her the depth that she deserves. They kind of do the same to Morgana, but they actually take from Gwen probably one of the biggest parts of her characterization, which is her love for Lancelot. The duty to Arthur, role as queen, the fact she loves Lancelot, and that kind of battle, that internal battle that she has, and they just kind of took that away and didn't do it. And when you see the chemistry those actors had, like, it's beautiful. And what an opportunity it truly was to make Arthur that tragic figure who realises that Lancelot wasn't there when he got with Gwen, and realising that maybe Gwen would actually have preferred to be with Lancelot. And he's that kind. He is that kind and understanding as a man that he just turns a blind eye to it. Imagine the tragedy. Imagine that. They messed Merlin up so badly. So, Morgana Pendragon, Wanda Maximoff. At the moment, I'm going to say Alicent Hightower from House of the Dragon. I know she's problematic, but I like Alicent at the moment. I don't know, there's a load of soap characters. Like, I really enjoy the soap operas. So quite a few soap characters. But maybe I'll make a video about different characters I like, because I get very, very specific when it comes to characters. Okay, Emma Cosgrove asks, okay, so there's one about what sparked my interest in Anne Boleyn and the Tudors, which I think I want to make a video on. I want to make a video about how I kind of came to that point of being completely obsessed and interested, not even just in Anne Boleyn, but also the depiction of Anne Boleyn. It became something of its own. You know, the idea that each generation has its own Anne Boleyn. We don't know that much about her because there was a whole smear campaign against her and lots of things were got rid of. But also because the stuff that we do have will be by her detractors and will be heavily misogynistic. Because she was beheaded and because people also did not want to make enemies of the king. That's how it used to work. So, you know, you'd go with whatever the king said. So she's really an enigma and we have to kind of piece things together. So the things we do know about her are really kind of, we've had to piece them together and figure it out. And to me, that's just fascinating. It's completely fascinating. And I'm personally interested in the relationship she had with her brother. because I'm obviously really close with my brother Dan. Like, I think of Dan as like my George. Like, you know, they seem to be very close, really good friends. They seem to have been allies, very similar intellectually. And I think part of the smear campaign, one thing we do have about Anne, which I think is actually a mistake by her detractors, they've accidentally given us this information. The fact that they smeared George, right, with those awful allegations, and they tried to humiliate them both, actually gives us a bit of a clue, in my opinion, of the closeness of those and the ally that she had there, because that is something that the king either did to hurt her more than anything else by hurting George, or needed George out of the picture because otherwise he wouldn't necessarily be able to get away with what he was doing. For whatever reason, when that happened, when that smear came out, when that lie was made about that brother and sister to humiliate them, because remember, they were very Christian and very religious, this was incredibly humiliating for them. What they actually did was show us all this way down the line, I think, that there was actually a very close relationship there. Not in any sort of sick way that Henry and Cromwell, etc., tried to present it, but we actually had quite a powerful brother and sister, and I don't think you see that very much in history. And I think, I don't know, I think the personality, we don't know a lot about Anne's personality, but I certainly do. I think it'll be hard for a woman not to relate in some ways to some elements of Anne, and it's very much, you know, patchwork, so you can kind of believe all different things about her. But I certainly think if you're somebody who is a woman who's political or has opinions on things, and you've been kind of torn down for it, and you've been kind of smeared, and you've experienced that kind of sexism, you know, if you've experienced that, then I feel like it's quite easy to connect to her situation, although we don't know 100%. You know, we don't know. The recording just stopped and I don't know why. So, but yeah, I wish we knew more about her, but we don't. And so that's really fascinating to me. I don't know, I find a lot of solace in her. And I don't know, I question myself, because it's like, we don't know a lot about her. We don't. And yet so many of us are very connected to Anne. And I feel like what's so weird about it is that so many people who are actually not monarchists. They are outspoken women who are quite political, who seem to find that sort of kinship in Anne Boleyn. A woman who faced a smear campaign, right? And I link it to, I want to make a video about Meghan Markle and Anne Boleyn. And even Diana as well. Because I feel like what we are seeing is that we haven't progressed as far as we think we have when it comes to tearing down a woman in the media and how we smear women and the smear campaigns we use. I've seen so many connections between... I mean, if you look at the way they report on Meghan Markle now, it actually sounds like what you'd have heard about Anne Boleyn in the 1600s. I mean, it's depressing. Okay, LMAO says, I would like to see a video on cluster B stigma and thoughts that come up surrounding that. Any experiences you want to share? So this person says they have BPD, NPD and HPD, and dealing with demonisation, especially from the mental health community, is really frustrating to say the least. Yeah, I would definitely like to make a video about that, because, I mean, I have to admit myself, I've not always been the best on this, because I know that sometimes I have used, you know, the idea of someone with narcissistic personality disorder. I think I've in the past, because of my own experiences, been tempted to kind of use that in a kind of derogatory way. But I don't think it's right to do that, and I try not to do that, really. And it's something that does worry me. I think the thing that really changed my mind on that is I think I was looking at the stigma towards people with BPD. Especially women with BPD, and I was kind of examining that. And then I started looking at NPD and the stigma associated with that. And I saw people who had NPD, and they were talking about how they suffered a lot of trauma, and they were trying to sort out that kind of stuff in their own minds, and they didn't want to hurt other people. And I guess I basically asked myself this question, and I kind of had to have a word with myself, because I thought, well, no, people are not the stigma of whatever diagnosis they have. People are their actions. And I have to believe that, and that's the right way, in my opinion. That's the right way to go about things. So yeah, I try to be more careful about that, especially because it's so often wrongly applied. So yeah, that's an awkward one. That's definitely an awkward one. But I would be really interested in talking about that. I feel like I'd be better at doing the BPD one because that's kind of what I know. And the thing is though, I don't even know if I have BPD. So I have quite a complex trauma history. I could have BPD, of course, but I don't know, and I'm still kind of understanding that right now. And I don't know, I don't want to like contribute to stigma just in my ignorance about other disorders if I'm trying to help and then I'm actually making it worse or something. But I'll definitely think about doing that if that will be helpful. Okay, so FreeFX says, hello Claudia, my question would be, since finishing your master's course, what is next for you? Where would you like to be in 5 years with life and studies, work / personal goals? I don't know. I mean, I think it's easier not to have plans. I mean, I do have plans in terms of, so I want to get my novel published. I want to get going with this YouTube channel. I really would like to raise awareness about abuse dynamics, domestic violence, abuse within family systems, etc. I'd really be interested in looking into that. I think I'm going to miss being a student. You know, I love learning and I love studying. Like I set myself, that's embarrassing, but I set myself tasks sometimes and I just sit there and I research and I make notes and I love doing that. In terms of my personal life, I'm just trying not to plan it because, you know, I don't know, I'm at that age where I'm at a weird age where a lot of my friends are in all different places in terms of some of them are married and have houses, you know, some of them have kids, some of them are still studying, some of them are kind of working and just figuring life out. Like, we're all in different places, and our generation got really messed up with the financial situation. You know, we did get hit by that pretty badly, but also I think as I've got older I've realised it's kind of not a good idea to, things will happen when they happen, and I think hopefully they happen when you're not trying to make them happen, if that makes sense. I would like to meet the love of my life. That would be really nice. But also it's not something that I'm kind of pushing or forcing. I believe through my own experiences that when I try and go through things with a good heart and with kindness, I try to, and I slip up all the time, but when I try to do that, things tend to work out okay. Or at least I find a path. And if I make a mistake, then I find that I learn from it. And just generally, I think that's how I want to go through life. I mean, I have a lot of inspirations in life, people that I look up to and I admire, and they're usually people who are independent thinkers, intelligent, people who have a lot to say about the world, a lot of kindness. I don't necessarily mean like educated, like in terms of, oh, they've got masters or degrees, but people who question systems and act with kindness and empathy. And I want to be like that. And I'm always having a word with myself. So another question I've got actually, which is by, let me just find it because it ties into this. This is by Carl KL, and it's about how my religious journey is going. So I feel like this ties into it. So I also want to make a video about finding religion for me and that kind of process, because I was brought up in an atheist family. We didn't really do religion. In some ways, kind of look down on religious people as if, you know, it's not scientific. And my granddad's a doctor, so very scientific, rational, that kind of thing. But for me, I've always felt this kind of spiritual feeling, like a faith, and I didn't know what it was, but I've always felt that kind of feeling. And I think in a lot of ways also, I'll admit, I think that in the past, I kind of, the way I grew up, kind of looked down on it, which is really wrong. You know, I kind of, you know how there was that kind of thing when I was growing up, which was like, oh, it's smarter to be an atheist, etc., etc. And I feel really bad about that because I don't think that's right at all. But that's how a lot of us were kind of, you know, brought up, and the kind of culture around us. But I found personally in my faith, it's making me feel more grateful for what I have and kind of helping me stay on a path. And I think prayer really helps me because it helps focus my mind. And I don't know, I suppose I feel more connected to people. It certainly helps me with things like forgiveness. So that's something I've really struggled with because, you know, when you have an abuse history and a trauma history, sometimes that can be a really hard place to reach. And I'm not saying that you have to get to that point, but for me, I knew I needed to get there to kind of move on in my own soul and to kind of heal. And I think that's been really helpful for me. So I think that I know things will happen in their own time and as they're meant to be. You know, I have faith in that. So I try to remain optimistic. If things go wrong, I try to learn from them. And I just keep trying to do better, always trying to keep learning. I never want to get to a point where I think I'm right about everything, because I think if you ever get to that point, then you've gone the complete wrong way, because you assume that you're right. Like, you should always be striving to learn more about things, and that's what I'm trying to do. So my hope for the future is, you know, I would love to, I don't know, I want to be a writer. I mean, I am a writer, technically, you know, but I would like to be able to do that as a way to earn and for that to be my profession. I'd love to have a family. I don't know if I want to be a mother, but I certainly, you know, look forward to having a family in whatever way that sort of happens for me. I would really like that. Dan and I talk sometimes, my brother, about, you know, Dan wants to have kids, and, you know, I look forward to being an auntie, and, you know, I look forward to being an auntie, and just whatever comes, really. But, you know, I'm just gonna wait and see what happens, and, you know, I don't think it's a good idea to kind of plan ahead. I think you'd go crazy if you were constantly comparing yourself to other people, especially because I've had so many different, like, mental health battles and other stuff in my personal life, which has made things difficult for me. And I think if the right person is out there for me, then they are, and they'll get it, and it doesn't matter that it's a bit later, is what I think, anyway. But it's fine if that also doesn't happen, you know. I kind of made my peace with who I want to be. And from what I've heard from people who are, you know, they do have families and they feel very fulfilled in their life or in their jobs or whatever they decide, whether that's to have children or not, or to have a family or not, they've often said that it's actually come at a point when they are focused on themselves, not in like a selfish way, but in terms of being healthy, being kind, being good, and then the good things come. So I hope that's the case, but I don't know. But that's kind of what I hope for my personal life. I just want to be a good, kind person and to keep growing. I hope I hope I'm clever in the future, that I've got so much more knowledge. I'm trying at the moment to world politics. I'm trying to get more of a grasp on. I'm trying to constantly learn from people older and with more experience, and just try and take it in and figure things out. Like, that's an ongoing journey, I think. I mean, I'm going to be 30 in 2 years. Less than 2 years, because it's going to be my birthday in April. So in the past, that would have made me feel really scared. But I've always had this feeling that my 30s are going to be the best years of my life. I don't know why. I've always had that. In my mind, I've always thought that if I made it to my 30s, they would be the best years of my life. And I do feel that. So, I don't know. I'd like a cat. Definitely would like a cat. I know I want a cat in my future. I think I'd be very happy. If I could be a writer and have a cat, I'd be overjoyed. Okay, I think I'm just going to do one more, because I talk for ages and ages and ages, and this will be really long. So what shall I answer? Oh, someone has said they would like me to make more regular ASMR. I will do. So what I'm going to try and do, when I find this camera, I will, and I'll plug in my microphone. So those take longer, but they're more awkward than you'd think they are, because I don't have, like, you know, a lot of the big ASMR artists. I love ASMR, like, I can't sleep without it. But they have, like, studios, and, like, you know, they try and soundproof the room they're in, etc. But for me, I have to try and do it at a time when it's really quiet. And it's really hard to do that. So I am going to do it, but I have to time it really carefully, and then it takes a long time to edit an ASMR video. But I want to make some more. I've had a couple of requests on that. So I will try and make those for you. Sorry that they take longer. It's just so much harder to plan those time-wise, but I will do that for you. Peyton says you'd like a guide to reading the Marvel comics, particularly the ones featuring Wanda and Pietro. I would love to do that. Like, once you get me started on Wanda and Pietro in the comics, I'm gone. I'd love to do that. I will do that. That'll be great fun. More Dan content. Dan, if you're new, Dan is my brother. He's like my best friend, and we have such a laugh together. We really do. And he is requested on this channel a lot, but he's a busy man. He's a busy man. But I'll try and book him in. I'll try and book him in, and we'll try and make something. We've been saying we're going to do this for ages. We've just got to try and sync up when the best time to do it is. Okay, I'm going to answer one more here. So this is from Emily Rose. Emily, you've left me such a really nice long message. Thank you so much for that. Okay. My question is, as an autistic and ADHD myself, do you feel you may also be autistic like me instead of combined with BPD, as I was almost misdiagnosed with BPD, as many female presenting autistic people are? I only ask because you're very similar to me, we're almost the same person, and I notice you have specific interests such as Anne Boleyn and Doctor Who. So Emily, I would say that that is a consideration. I mean, when I was growing up, it was complicated. So when I was younger, I think it's difficult because I've got a very complex trauma history. And I think that can cloud a lot of things, especially when you don't feel like you can disclose that to anyone. So it doesn't really come into things. But yeah, so when I was younger, it was asked about, you know, I saw a therapist and it was kind of raised that I might be autistic or have ADHD, and the family did not want that for me. No. So that wasn't spoken about again. But yeah, it has come up every so often, and you know, I wouldn't be surprised. There is autism, you know, through the family, I believe, and I don't see it as a bad thing or a weakness or anything like that. So I would be open to. I don't know. I mean, I could do. You know, I think it's possible, is what I'll say. I think it's very possible. I do relate to. I've got a lot of autistic friends, and I do relate to a lot of people who are, neurodiverse. I relate to a lot. So, and people who have trauma histories, etc. So yeah, I think it's incredibly possible. I don't know, it's one of those things that I keep procrastinating on. Do you ever do that where you know, in the back of your mind, you know, I often do this about realizations about myself. It's like I realize something and then it takes me months and months or even years because it's in the back of my mind, like maybe that's a thing, and I'll say to myself, yeah, maybe, and then I just won't go anywhere with it. But yeah, I would be interested to know, you know, certainly I'm not neurotypical. I wish I'd known that when I was growing up. I wish there'd been more support. But, you know, what can you do? But thank you, Emily, for that. And I am going to look into that. I love that. We're almost the same person. I'm sorry for you if that's the case. I hope you're doing better than I am. But I appreciate that. Thank you, Emily. Okay, I'm going to go now because it's going to be really long. Sorry about the poor quality. Just a chatty vlog. So if you have more questions, you can ask them here. I'll probably also ask for more questions on Twitter and things like that. Yeah, it's good to talk to you guys. I need to go and wash my hair. So I'll see you really soon. Love you loads. Okay, love you. Bye.